Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Schneider. I'm a partner at AmPhil, and I'm here with two of my colleagues today from our Philadelphia office. Austin Detwiler, a senior director, and Stephs Advice, an associate director. And it has been a very interesting 4 months, almost 4 months in 2025. Lots of ups and downs in the market. We have some economic uncertainty with tariffs. We have government grants and money being pulled out of nonprofits. We thought it might be beneficial to share some of our thoughts, what we're seeing, maybe some advice that we're giving to our clients that might be helpful for those who will be watching this. We're going to have a very informal conversation. I have a few questions. We'll see where this goes. This is not scripted or rehearsed in any way, shape, or form. But having been through COVID recently, we certainly learned some things, and our clients learned some things during that period of uncertainty. And for some, it was actually a very scary time. And interestingly enough, our firm, AmPhil, was actually founded in January of 2009 at the height of the financial crisis. So probably not the best time to start up a company of any sorts, but there is certainly a lot of uncertainty and anxiety. And the nonprofits were struggling. So it's an interesting time for us from a historical perspective to start a company and work in this environment. But the good news is we made it through that. We made it through COVID. And I have no doubt that we will make it through this, and some nonprofits hopefully stronger than where they started. So with that said, why don't we begin the conversation? And I will ask this first. I am curious, Austin and Steph, just what, if anything, you're hearing from some of our clients right now, some of the nonprofits that we're talking to. Is there any thoughts, themes kind of rising to the fore in conversations you're having?
I'll say at the beginning, I get really hesitant talking about thoughts and themes because there's always trends going on in the economy, in the nonprofit sector that we can't control, right? So when we think about fundraising, when the times are good and when times are bad, the fundamentals are the same no matter what. If we get too hung up on the trends, we distract from thinking about the right things to do. We say at AmPhil all the time, fundraising success is doing the right things the right way, consistently and consistently well over time. Don't want to get distracted from doing the right things. That said, it's not as if the sort of like themes that come up, the questions that are asked are irrelevant or unhelpful. One of the main ones we're seeing is the market's not really up or down right now. It's unstable. And that's just causing donors and fundraisers to start asking questions. What should I do right now? The main one that came to me, we were planning a big ask for a capital campaign. And we're bringing in the lead donor as a peer asker in that meeting. And he called and said, hey, should we hold back? People feel poor right now. Is this the wrong time to make the ask? And it was a great question. We're trying to think through, we can't hold on making asks. We got to raise the money. So I called him and I said, well, what's your suggestion? I could come to you and ask you for $500,000. What would your thought be? His response, he thought, and he said, it would be different for an organization that I'm currently supporting versus an organization that's completely new to me. Okay. If they were new to me, I would probably say, let's talk later. If it's somebody that I've been supporting, I definitely want to help them through this time. So he wouldn't be put off by the ask, and he would want to think very carefully about how he can help them. So what's the main thing we're seeing? It's uncertainty and people thinking very carefully about how to navigate that kind of uncertainty.
Do you think at times they might be overthinking that uncertainty?
I often think people are overthinking things like uncertainty because, again, it distracts from doing the right things. What's fundraising at the end of the day? It's cultivating and retaining the donors you have and finding new donors. If you start wondering about all these ancillary and outside things, you're not doing these two things. You're not laser focused on what brings in money and what advances the mission. Primarily cultivating and upgrading the donors that you have.
And the base part of it never changes, that what you're doing is entering a relationship, right? So if you're entering into a relationship with someone, even if they're saying, maybe you're trying to get a new gift out of a donor, and maybe they might say, yeah, come back to us in the future. But you have the opportunity to say, well, I'd love to keep you updated in the meantime, first of all. And if other people are getting freaked out, not making asks to that donor, you might be able to get deeper into a relationship. Also, if you're coming into their life at a time when they're a little vulnerable, that's not a bad thing for a relationship either. And you can be really open about what they're feeling, even asking for their direction. one of the things that we often put in, a meeting request letter or a letter of intent for a foundation or an individual is we'd love to get your thoughts, your feedback, because you're such a great voice in the movement. And we want to know what you think. You can do that same thing with a major donor, even on the financial side of things. You'll become closer to that donor. They'll become closer to you. You'll build trust and you'll probably learn something.
So one thing you just pointed out is that sometimes if others are pulling back or not doing these things, it kind of creates a gap or an opening in the fundraising philanthropic marketplace that you can actually step into, and there may be less voices or less competition. So I'm curious, how are nonprofits and some of our clients like responding to the advice you just shared with me? Are they receptive?
I think so. I mean, typically, if you can say, well, let's just try it with maybe this handful of donors, or we're still going to bring in, 5 new names to you, people we think would be interested. Let's just lean more on the feedback if you're not comfortable with this or that. And they find that people are actually pretty open. And once you get you get one person responding to you, willing to take a meeting, even though it's maybe uncertain, they're like, oh, hey, maybe this works. Like you say, it works.
Okay. So small success, you can build upon them. With that said, what is some other advice, just generally, that you have shared with folks that you're working with?
Yeah, here's the good news about when markets get difficult is it's an opportunity to get smarter. You always want to be fundraising intelligently, but it's really easy to fall into markets are good, money's coming in, and not pull back and be as sort of strategic and proactive with your fundraising plans as you could be. So when things get tough, what do? You pull back and you get smarter. A couple thoughts on that. When you're a little less sure about how every gift's going to land, that's a time to really lean into donor planning. What do you need to do? You need to not stop asking, but you need to make good asks. So pull back, look at your caseload and think through who are the key people I'm going to go to right now that I have those good relationships with, where I can ask for advice from them, where I know that it's time for a renewal gift, even though I was hoping for an upgrade. And then if you're thinking about direct response in the mail, this is the time to think really carefully about how to make your list selects smarter. The worst thing you do is stop mailing. Same thing, stop asking major donors, don't stop asking the small donors, acquisition and house file. But you can rethink or rejigger what's the audience for your house file. Do you want to mail a little less deep to save cost? Do you want to revisit old lists on the acquisition side that used to perform really well to sort of boost your performance right now? I think that's the main thing. How can we pause and get really smart about what we're doing?
So Steph, do you have anything that you may want to add to what Austin just shared? Just maybe thinking back to some conversations you've had, in the last few weeks with clients, any advice that you're giving right now?
Yeah. The main thing is you just never want to assume all your donors have the same experience that you have. And especially even if you're thinking about major donors often and you're thinking this person definitely has a lot invested in the stock market, that may not be true of many people in your house file. I think it's something like 30 to 35% of Americans are not in the stock market at all, including retirement funds. So while, things that happen in the stock market are going to affect people on a lower level, inflation is still going to be pushing on those people. They're not making decisions based on what's going on in the stock market. They're really making decisions based on what's left over in their pocket at the end of the month. So, it is a harder time if there's more inflation, there's less in their pocket. But the main thing you need to do then is make sure that you're in front of them very often, because you don't really know when they're going to have a little bit extra.
Yeah. So. Yeah. For a lot of your donors, the price of eggs is what makes it hard for them to give. But for other donors, when the price of eggs is staying the same, but the market's down, that's when it's hard for them. So remember the donors who were affected by grocery prices, but aren't as affected right now by market changes.
I guess that would, in a way, you're making a case for diversification within your file. You don't put all your eggs, to use a pun, in one basket.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the talking, that's good advice about some individual donors and how certain donors give, whether it's out of assets or income. But let's talk, just spend a minute or two talking about the markets and kind of the ups and downs. I haven't checked the markets today. They could be up 10%. They could be down 20. I have no idea. But when I looked last, the S&P 500 was down a little over 9%. I think the Dow was like 6 or 7%. So not like cataclysmic, but downtrend. Of course, we have to put in perspective. We've had some really good years leading up to now, but think about just the last few months. Most people, at least if you're kind of an average investor like myself, your portfolio's not as healthy as it was a few months ago. Okay, with that said, foundations typically do give off of their investments, their corpus, assets under management, rule of thumb, IRS, 5%. Sometimes that's a rolling average of 3-5 years. So thinking if you do have foundations that you're fortunate to receive funding from, how should you be thinking about foundations and approaching them? Any advice you'd give to a client right now, say if like 30-40% of their funding's from foundations?
Yeah.
It's true that, they're going to have more to give if they're doing better in the market. But generally, when a foundation starts saying to you, it's not a great time right now because of the market, or it's the end of the year, we spent up all of our funds, et cetera, they're not usually saying, I don't want to support you because of a personal, financial situation. They're usually saying your mission's not as important as other missions to me. So it's kind of an excuse that you can use in any situation. It's the same as saying, we don't accept unsolicited proposals, right? Like, you absolutely do accept unsolicited proposals. So you can take maybe just not at face value what a foundation representative might say. It might be more of an invitation to build a relationship so that they feel that you are higher up on their priority list in the future. So just remember that, I think.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. The relationship point, because so a lot of foundations are trying very carefully to stick to hitting that 5% at the end of the year, but they don't know what 5% is going to be until the end of the year. So they might actually be pulling back more than individual donors. But you always got to remember, we like to say foundations are people too. So what are we doing in the meantime? Keeping up relationships with the people at the foundation so that when we get closer to the end of the year and they know how much they need to give this year, you're at the top of the list. So the fact that the grant's not coming right now or they're not cutting big checks right now doesn't mean you don't want to keep them updated on how things are going and stay in touch so you're ready.
Well, and I would presume too, if this was the year at the beginning of the year, think, we want to ask for that 50% increase this year. Maybe, the win is actually just getting the renewal,
right?
Or the win might be at 10%. Okay, that's good advice.
Yeah. It's also something that you can feel empowered to talk about with the foundation representative, though, because they know they're giving away money. There's no awkwardness in bringing up finances in a meeting with a foundation. And hopefully, if you're making a big ask, you are having a personal face-to-face or Zoom meeting anyway. So that might be a good time to just ask transparently, especially if you're already getting funds from this foundation, to say, like, what's your situation? This is what we were, for our program, this is what would be most beneficial. Is that an appropriate ask based on your situation right now?
Yeah, or find out from them, are their priorities shifting given the changes in the landscape? During COVID, a lot of foundations shifted to local giving. They had some local focus and they're looking elsewhere. They're like, hey, actually, we're going to really invest in our community right here. Or they went into saying, actually, we're totally open to general operations grants because we know you're suffering, you're struggling, and we don't know what you need. And so we just want to help out. So go in, instead of thinking, we're definitely going for that big increase for this new program, call them and say, hey, things are changing a little bit. How's that affecting your priorities? How best can we align this year with where your priorities are?
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about things nonprofits should do, nonprofit leaders, fundraisers. What are some things that they shouldn't do? So, don't use any names if you're going to, refer to examples. But I am curious, have you seen, or have heard, like, we're going to do this or not do this, and you're going, oh my goodness, it's like not the thing to do. Like any sage advice that you would give of like, don't do that.
We could probably say almost in unison, don't cut direct mail.
Yeah, don't cut mail.
Okay.
Yeah, don't stop asking. Don't panic. The markets go up and down. Okay, one of the reasons, the reason AmPhil was founded at the height of the recession is because the founders really believed in the American charitable sector and how essential nonprofits were for a flourishing democracy and a strong society, right? Why is it such a noticeable thing in America? Because we have the most vibrant nonprofit charitable sector in the world by enormous margins. It's not only impressive, it's also super resilient. So you can track the Giving USA data, the big report for the past several decades, And through all kinds of ups and downs, the nonprofit sector stays strong. It's right around, we did research at the beginning of COVID. It's right around 2% of the GDP, no matter what happens, right? So you don't need to panic, because even if times get stabilize down, that doesn't mean charitable giving stops. For a lot of donors and foundations, it goes up. So keep asking, don't panic, don't pull out of the mail or out of email or out of major donor asks.
Well, I'm thinking about major individual donors in particular. Someone gave me advice, gosh, this was like 2008 maybe, someone who's quite successful. And he said, when there's turbulent waters, people make money.
Yeah.
And I always remember that. So not that I'm making money necessarily, but like it's stuck with me that, when there's uncertainty and turbulence, like someone actually is often making money. And a lot of times those are the individual donors, right? Like, whether they're trading, but, oftentimes, during COVID, there's all kinds of production that increased, and there's a lot of businesses that were stood up that they actually made quite a bit of money. So think about some of the individual donors. If I'm, say you're coming to me and you're asking me for $50,000, and I kind of hedge, right? I'm like, well, I'm not sure what might be a response that you might get.
Yeah, that's great. I'll give you an example that just happened with a donor recently with a colleague of mine. Went into the ask. I think his ask was $25,000, and the donor said, no, I can't do that. So here's the tip, what not to do. Don't take no as an easy no. So I asked for $25,000. What was his response? Thanks for your candor. Why is that not an appropriate amount right now? I'm not sure how the business is going to do. I'm not sure how the markets are going to do. So the follow-up question, would you consider doing half right now? And then let's visit later this year and see if you can do the other half then, or we'll talk about it next year. He agreed immediately. He cut the first half of the check right there. And they've got a meeting scheduled for later this year to see how the markets are doing. That 50% of $25,000, that's still an increase from his past gift. It just wasn't as high as we were hoping to make in that moment. So don't take that first no as a no. Always be ready to pivot to, could we break it up? Could we do it over 2 years? Could we revisit down the road?
I like that because it also follows the rule of don't make the donor an ATM. You can't assume that they're giving because they have this perfect algorithm in their head. I'm going to give X dollars. Mm-hmm. You're going to make X impact. Mm-hmm. If I have fewer dollars, I'm giving you fewer, whatever it might be. Because it just levels your relationship with them as a person. So you have to remember that they have the capacity for large-heartedness beyond whatever's going on in the market, and you have to allow them to share that with you. It's going to be better for everyone if you do.
Yeah. And you also can be large-hearted with your donors, right? So don't forget that even people of means are people too. And when you've been trying to build relationships with them, they're fundraising relationships, but they have to be authentic relationships too. When things are hard for them, don't just walk away. For all kinds of reasons. One, they're people. Be large-hearted with them. And two, times when they get bad aren't bad forever. So one good story about that, this is from the 2008 recession. This is a story I have from a friend. So a donor was a major donor, a lot of organizations. She lost a lot in the recession and couldn't support these organizations anymore. And everyone stopped visiting her except one group. They kept checking in with her year after year. A couple years later, she was doing great again. She reached out and said, nobody stayed in touch with me other than you. She stopped supporting them and leaned in really hard to that one organization. They didn't do it because they saw that payoff at the end. They did it because they cared about her and it was the right thing to do. But it was great that it worked out long term. That's an important thing to keep in mind right now.
A friend of our firm has said, be near, dear, and clear. Yeah. That's the dear part. Mm-hmm. I think folks know this, but sometimes forget. Foundations have to give away money. So regardless of circumstances, regardless of the markets, if they went from $1 billion to $950 million, or they went from, 20 million to 19 million in their corpus, whatever the amount is, they still have to give away money. I mean, they are required by law to give away 5%. And a lot of times they don't give much more than 5%. They are able to, but they have to be giving away 5%. So I think that's important for folks to remember vis-a-vis the relationship with foundations. Don't stop asking, don't stop engaging, don't stop building the relationships, because they're going to be giving grants to someone, to some organization. Let's talk just briefly about individual donors. Should always be cultivating, should always be looking to acquire. But there are some trends, some data points showing that there are fewer individual donors in the marketplace. Yes, the U.S. Philanthropic market is robust, it's strong, it's enduring, especially compared to the rest of the world. But there are some trends that we are seeing. Maybe the two of you can just talk a little bit about the importance of retention and things to do to make sure that you are keeping your donors.
Yeah. What are you seeing so far?
Yeah, on the membership level, sort of those people who are giving $10 a month or $25 here or there, up to maybe $500 or $1,000 over the course of a year. There were big spikes in people coming in on this grassroots level throughout COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So right after that, there was a huge retention problem. And I think we're seeing something kind of like that again. You know, the market was up, the inflation was a little bit down for a little bit, people were giving. So in some ways, retention's down. In other ways, you could think of it like if you had a spike in your file and then it's a little bit lower this year, take that into account. It might not be that your retention levels are terrible, but
Just part of this overall trend.
Yeah, part of the kind of ups and downs. But one thing that we are doing with a lot of our clients to help build for grassroots level donors over time, if you lean into monthly donations, you will see better retention rates. So we've been doing that a lot, saying even bring new people in with that recurring language, but be mindful to speak to your existing donors, maybe more and make an additional one-time gift. So if you can talk to people a little bit differently, build for the future by bringing new dollars in through monthly, but get your dollars up right now by asking your current donors for one time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is a really good point. When you're comparing year over year, you got to look for those spikes and compare actually parallel years. Insofar as a turbulent economy is an occasion, an opportunity to get smarter, one of the things to lean into right now is donor retention. Even when you take into account that spike, we don't want to forget about the importance of getting that retention number up if we want to stay as a growing organization. That doesn't mean stop acquisition, stop bringing in new donors, but it does mean if you're trying to tighten the belt a little bit to prepare for stormy waters, really lean into keeping donors that are already giving to you around.
So what are some practical tips for retention?
One of the best things you can do is let your donor know that they are not retained. I think statistically, most donors, even 2 or 3 years after making a gift, think of themselves as a donor to your organization. So on your, CRM, it says this person's lapsed. They haven't given in 26 months. The donors themselves aren't thinking. Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, I'm a huge supporter of the dog rescue, right, from 3 years ago. Yeah. So you can very practically do that kind of tax receipt mailing if it's the beginning of the year. Anytime throughout the year, you can do the more relationship-based, like, hey, first name, Doug, you supported us last year, but we haven't gotten your gift this year. Would you renew? So just be super clear and open with your donors that have lapsed, that they're not your current donors.
Mm-hmm. And like Steph said, monthly giving clubs, that's the easiest way to invite people to set themselves up to not become lapsed donors, to increase your retention rate. And then once you've got that thing rolling, then you start working on upgrading those donors. Steph also does, I've learned from her with a lot of her clients, emails near the end of the year where you say membership expiring soon. If you've got that monthly membership program rolling, then you can email everybody and say, hey, Doug, we're so grateful for your gift of $50 in August 2024. Your membership expires in 60 days, right? Or your donor status expires in 60 days. Mm-hmm. Let them know, because they want to be supporters of your organization. They're proud of giving to you. Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of things going on. They're forgetting that they need to renew their gift.
Great advice. Okay, I think this is great. Hopefully this is helpful for those who will ultimately watch this. Any closing thoughts?
The main thing I would want to throw out, as I've said before, I think it's two main points. Don't panic and stick to the fundamentals. Build relationships with your donors. Be strategic. Plan at the outset. It shouldn't. One of the parts of getting smarter is putting really good plans together at the beginning of the year, or even, Doug, you wrote an article for Philanthropy Daily. during the COVID pandemic that was called something like strategic planning even now. It's middle of the year, things are tough. Doesn't mean you need to wait until the new fiscal year. What does it mean? Sit back and look at what donor plans you need to get in place, what sort of communications calendar you need to get in place. You find some front end time to do that, and then you can do the hard work without as much effort over time, which will remove the panic and help you stick to the fundamentals.
So keep moving.
Keep moving.
Yeah, and then on that membership level at the bottom, just stay in the stream. People are coming by. You want to always be in front of them. You want to give them the opportunity to give when it's the right time for them. Don't assume you know everything about their lives. And even if that means that you have to pull, maybe you're making a smaller list or a tighter group of people that you're sending these things to, don't stop sending out donor communications, and really just leave it on the table that they can pick it back up when it's the right time for them.
Yeah, let me add one final thought as well. One of the most important things when a donor's saying that they're not going to support you, that's them saying you haven't made the case strongly enough. So part of getting smart right now is really figuring out how do we make our value proposition really super strong. Even if the market's down, if you're running a nonprofit, you know that what you're doing matters, whether times are good or times are bad. You got to figure out how to articulate that really clearly to your donors.
Yeah, and if you're starting to get a little bit nervous about asking for money, go turn on the comments feature on your donation form after the submission, but give people an opportunity to talk to you when they're donating, and you will hear heartwarming stories about what it means to them that they're able to support you even in this difficult time. You'll hear people, they'll start a $10 a month donation, and they'll write in time and time again. I've seen this. They'll say like, I really want to give more. I'll give more when I can. This is what I can give right now. And it rehumanizes kind of the experience.
Yeah.
Austin, you're not going to let Steph get the last word.
No, I mean, it's Steph's point, but adding into that, part of that is cultivating the disposition of being really inspired and moved by every gift that donors make, for two reasons. One, it really is a miracle that donors give you gifts big and small completely freely. Also, it'll help you remember to be really encouraged by every good thing that happens. It's like reading Yelp reviews, right? You see 10 good reviews and one bad review and you think the restaurant's not good. You can have 10 great things happen and one bad donor meeting and think things aren't going well. Remember every gift and how exciting and encouraging it is when those things happen.
Well, thank you both for your time. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you have client calls and meetings. Also, you're like on 2 calls right before we started this. Good to spend time with you. And hopefully this was helpful for anyone who may watch this at any point. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Doug.
So if you liked what you heard today and this was helpful and informative, I'd encourage you to go to AmPhil.com. That's AmPhil.com to learn more about our firm, the services we offer, how we help nonprofits. There's a slew of information there. You can sign up for a newsletter. There's ways that you can get in contact with us if you'd like to speak with one of us here or one of our colleagues. We'd be happy to have a no strings attached conversation with you, maybe do a little bit of brainstorming, bounce some ideas. And so if we'd like to learn more, we'd love to hear from you.